The Importance of Voting by Stephanie DeHaan. Did you know that there are more people in our country who check their Facebook every day than the amount of active voters? Did you know that there are more people who turn on their TV each year to watch the Super Bowl than the amount of people who take a minute of their time to vote on important topics in our country? Your answer is more than likely to be no. Voting accounts for almost every decision made in our lives. Be it something simple, like the decision of who will be your class representative, or something way more complex, like who will be the leader in charge of our country. Voting is something that may seem optional, simple, or even unnecessary, but it's important to know that voting wasn't always easy, and it wasn't always as simple as it is today. There's a long and tangled record of the history and progression of voting, one where many lives were lost, many protests were held, and much blood was shed. There are many reasons why voting is important, but most of all, it's to realize how fortunate we are to be living in a country where we have a say and where our decision to vote can actually change our lives. The history of voting is one that's long and always progressing. Who knows, maybe in the future, voting might even change than how it is today and how we are used to it. Voting wasn't always open to everyone, though. We have made many great strides since voting became a part of our country in 1776. 1776 is the year when America signed the Declaration of Independence and we became our own country. We were no longer being ruled by a king anymore, so this was amazing because now we were able to conduct our own country and make our own laws. In 1789, we got the privilege that white men, landowners, have the right to vote. This was all great and all, but this kind of didn't include everyone. Black people, women, and many others were not included in this. In the year 1865, now all men had the right to vote if you were 21 and older. This took place after the Civil War Slavery Act was abolished. So this was kind of a scam though, because in order to vote, all the people still needed to put up with a lot of violence, take literacy tests, and pay poll taxes. It wasn't until over 100 years later that the Voting Act was passed. In 1920, women get the right to vote all across the country. Women were left out of previous agreements, so they had to fight state by state, using protests and rallies in order to earn the privilege of voting. The year was 1965, when all men were now able to vote equally. But a few years later, men started to realize that they were being drafted out for war, where they can potentially lose their lives, and they didn't even have the option to vote because they were under 21. So in 1971, a new law was passed where anyone 18 and older was able to vote. Now, this is all great. We know the whole history of voting. But hey, why is voting still important today? What does that do for us? The Tennessee Constitution states that all power is inherent in the people, but we need to make sure that we use that power. So, a U.S. census taken in 2008 reported that only 63% of registered voters actually voted. However, only 73% of America is even registered to vote. So, in reality, that means that only 45% of the people in our country voted for some of the most major decisions that happened. This makes a big difference in our lives, whether you vote or not. As people, it's important that we exercise our right to vote. Voting helps you be an active member in your community and can help shape the world that we live in today. Everyone has their own opinion on something. So, by voting, that's how you get your voice across. That's how you get your opinion heard. So, people may think that voting is a waste of time or that it's unnecessary because there's so many other people who might have the same opinion as you. But if you think that way, then everyone else might think that way too, and nothing would ever get voted upon. That would only leave elected officials to make all the decisions for us, which contradicts the whole purpose of even living in a democracy, where people have the right to vote. That being said, it is our utmost important right that we as American citizens utilize our important and crucial right to vote.